Second part. The sound of a running shower could be heard, mixed with a whistled melody. That's the Nobles' Moon, a very popular tune in the capital more than a decade ago. As she shared that tidbit with Dee, who was leaning back against one wall, the doctor trained a look of boundless compassion on the face of the tiny figure lying in bed. Lurie's face was red and puffy, and his breath as hot as fire. I'm amazed one so small climbed as far as he did in this snow. He set out before dawn. Must really have had a good reason, wouldn't you say? Apparently, Lurie hadn't told the doctor about his father yet. No doubt his poor equipment and his exhaustion had brought on his high fever. And by the look of him, he's coming down with pneumonia. I have some medicine with me, but it's not likely to work on something this serious. Now it's just up to his own strength. This is one of the nobility's portable refuges, Dee said in a flat tone. Vera's cheeks flushed. The young man's voice was that gorgeous. It should be stocked with medical supplies. From off in the distance, Lilia called out in reply, I bought this refuge from a traveling merchant. The medicine and weapons were sold separately. Too rich for my blood. Vera dropped her gaze. She had an uncommon number of wrinkles for her age, and her expression suggested she was about to earn more. Merchants who specialized in buying and selling the nobility's things, everything from everyday goods to weapons and magical apparatus, met several different kinds of welcome out on the frontier. In impoverished villages, the merchants might be killed, or at least robbed of their wares, while in wealthy villages they would be paid whatever price they asked. The merchants were also in the habit of changing their goods in an effort to maximize profits. Take this refuge, for example. Some merchants might throw in the weapons and medical supplies at no extra cost. In any case, the doctor continued, why did he come up here all alone? If nobody tried to stop him, there's not much we can do about that. But if someone goaded him into it, I'll curse them for as long as I live. Will he make it? Dee inquired. As I just said, it all comes down to the boy's constitution. If we had just one of the nobility's nutrient supplements, he'd be all set in 5 minutes' time. But all we can do here is sit back and watch. Vera's gaze skewered Dee. Say, you have noble blood in you, don't you? Isn't there anything you can do? Are you carrying any fortifying drugs or anything? It's no use, Doc. Lilia spat coldly from the depths of the 700-square-foot refuge. It's great that you work as a doctor out in a frontier village and all, but how could you be so misinformed when it comes to the nobility? I wonder. That's the problem with book smarts. You see, the nobles' blood is blue, and it's cold enough to freeze anything it touches. My, but aren't you well informed? Vera said, turning to find the tall woman in a combat bodysuit, white steam still rising from her. As a warrior's first layer of protection, the bodysuit was what kept their skin from harm, with most composed of fire dragon scales or the hides of iron men. Judging from the luster of the one the girl wore, it was one of the more affordable, lightweight, metal alloy types referred to as Smith-made. Still, they would deflect rounds from a high-caliber rifle, as long as two didn't strike the same spot, and no amount of biting from the fangs of rock serpents, lesser demons, or the like would harm it. Put second and third layers of combat gear over that, and it was said even an infant could serve as a warrior. However, what protected this young woman's body was of considerably less interest than the heavenly gifts beneath it. Full breasts bulged from the chest protector, and as if to emphasize the richness of her other assets, she had an hourglass waist and beautiful legs exposed by the merciless slit of the suit skirt. Every inch of her flesh was pink and steaming, and to make matters worse, she gave off an indescribable perfume. If some masculine foe were to suddenly attack now, he'd most likely lose the will to fight and succumb to a counterattack. As her alluring scent spread mercilessly in all directions, Lilia's eyes flashed with malice. You might even call it a glint of madness. My parents and two brothers were all drained of blood by the nobility, then had their heads cut off. They had no problem feeding on them, but didn't want them joining their ranks, I guess. My big brother was 9, and my little one 6. And that's what noble blood really means. And that's what flows through him. No point asking him to do anything for humans. Don't forget, this is the same man who left behind a moaning, feverish child. That was only because he knew I was coming. Perhaps fed up with the winds of hatred that billowed at her, Vera had risen to the bait. I wonder about that. Tell me, Dee, if the doctor or I hadn't been there, would you have seen to the kid? Of course not. Her look of hatred faded away unexpectedly. Dee had gotten up. You may not have any medicine to treat pneumonia, but you have something I want. Can I have it? He asked the doctor. Oh, could my meager equipment be of some use, I wonder? Just a heat pack. They only had one at the general store. Apparently they'll be getting more in tomorrow. Well, I'll be. I had no idea you were so sensitive to the cold. Will 10 hold you? 1 will be fine. Aren't you polite? Producing the red package from her pack on the floor, the doctor gave it to Dee, who then did something unexpected. He rolled up his left sleeve. An identical heat pack was wrapped around his wrist. Both Vera and Lilia donned expressions that seemed to say, "What's pretty boy up to now?" Taking off the old heat pack and tossing it down a nearby garbage chute, he tore open the new one and wrapped it around his left wrist. As the two women inundated him with looks of suspicion, the hunter made a fist, and then opened it again. Apparently no longer able to bear it, Lilia said, "What kind of hocus pocus is this?" "I'm sensitive to the cold." As he said that, Dee bent his wrist back far, then slammed the palm of his hand against the wall hard enough for them to hear a snap. A low groan rang out. The eyes of both women, wide with astonishment, followed the source of that voice and came to rest on Lurie. Dee headed for the washroom. It was located beside the bath. The reason there was such an amenity here, although the nobility inherently loathed running water, was simple. They were for human women who hadn't yet been turned into vampires. In one era, nobles had brought human beauties with them like pets. They were a kind of status symbol. He passed his left hand under the infrared water faucet, palm up. Water flowed from the faucet, boiling hot water. Dee peered down silently at the palm of his hand as transparent droplets bounced off it, and steam wafted up. 10 seconds passed, then 20. There was only the endless sound of running water, and Dee himself seemed to dissolve into the very flow of time. When 3 minutes had passed, the palm of his left hand had only turned slightly pinkish, but ripples passed through it, and a tiny pit opened. The hot water flowed into it. Another 30 seconds passed, and suddenly there was a choked cough. like a living creature spitting up water, and warm water shot back up. And then a hoarse voice drawled, "What are you doing?" Nobles target their victims while they are asleep. Awake yet? Not yet. Cold. So cold. Near let out a big yawn. By the look of things, the countenance carbuncle in the hunter's left hand had trouble with the cold. For that reason, it made sense that as he climbed in the fierce blizzard, he had fallen into the illusion beast's trap. I have a job for you. Drink a little more to clear your head. Once again, the hot water sprayed everywhere. Knock it off. Would he quit it already? I'm already sharp as a tack. These tiny shards rang out mere seconds later. Page break. I simply can't believe it, Vera said, making no attempt to mask the admiration in her voice or in her eyes. Just a few minutes earlier, she'd watched with her own eyes as Dee put his left hand to the boy's chest, and the child's temperature had dropped rapidly. His breathing had returned to normal, and his perspiring had ceased. There were things from the days when the nobility, sorcery, and witchcraft held sway that even now the strictest of doctors wouldn't acknowledge. However, the phenomenon she'd just witnessed was impossible from the standpoint of physics. In other words, it could be called a miracle. Dampiers can do things like that. Dee met the query from the stunned doctor with silence. Perhaps he meant that seeing was believing. Lilia and Dust had already gone to bed. Only the two of them remained in the refuge's living room. Even at my age, I still don't know much about the nobility, said Vera, slumping back against the sofa warily. Slapping the polished ebony armrest with her palm, she continued, "It all looks so real. This sofa, the table, and you." From between chapped lips that hadn't been adorned with lipstick for a long time, a thin breath escaped. I mean, this refuge has 10 more rooms to it. But with one press of a switch, it folds up smaller than an umbrella. Honestly, instead of hating the nobility for their deeds, I'm more impressed by this. Oh, do you mind if I smoke? Taking a crinkled paper pack from the chest pocket of her coat, she pulled a cigarette out before putting the rest away. She rubbed the end of the cigarette against the armrest, and it sparked to life. "You a heavy smoker?" "You a heavy smoker?" Vera coughed furiously. The voice had been hoarse. Striking her chest a few times to get her breathing back under control, she said, "You're quite the ventriloquist, aren't you? But I can't say I care for your tastes." Dee squeezed his left hand into a tight fist. The low voice was cut off. "I went to college in the Western Frontier, where I studied medicine and physics. As a result, I believe I know a little something about the scientific level of what the nobles left behind and the substance of their civilization. The world may be guided by the will of the living, but it's science that supports those efforts. Even hundreds of thousands of years from now, human beings probably won't have reached the same level as the nobility. Yet those same nobles are now in their sunset. Are civilization and science such fleeting things? No. Even with eternal life, they can't stop the end of the world. What, then, is the meaning of life?" "What do you think?" Dee inquired softly. Vera's form was reflected in his deep, dark eyes. The doctor hesitated a bit, taking a long drag of her cigarette, then slowly exhaling it. The smoke swelled like a mushroom, and then quickly faded. Gazing at Dee, Vera said, "The meaning of life is dying. Nothing from the hunter. Or perhaps it would be better to say that being limited gives life purpose. It means people have to find a purpose for their own life, even if they don't always find one. Everything finite comes to an end someday," said Dee. A faint look of desolation flitted across his handsome visage. "In that respect, there's no difference between humans and nobles." "No. There's a fundamental difference. Human beings can create life. For all their ageless immortality, the nobility can't do that. All they can do is drain humans of their blood and add them to their ranks. But that, too, is a new life." Vera fell silent. She'd encountered similar situations before. That experience allowed her to choose the best response in a heartbeat. Second part, end.